A disabled janitor was ridiculed for taking in a dying German shepherd.
No.
One expected what happened next. Rain came down in a light, miserable drizzle, the kind that soaked through clothing without a sound. The industrial district on the edge of town lay quiet, forgotten by time and humanity, with shuttered warehouses and rusted fences, leaning like tired skeletons. Puddles reflected a gray sky and the flickering neon sign of a long-closed diner. Beside a trash heap, hidden between two dumpsters, lay a creature so broken it barely resembled a dog. Its fur was patchy, eaten away by mange and wounds. Its ribs jutted through skin, and its eyes, crusted with discharge, flickered, open only when thunder rumbled in the distance. The smell was sharp, a mix of rot, blood, and damp fur. A German shepherd, once proud and strong, now shook uncontrollably, too weak to stand, too scared to move. A group of young factory workers had just clocked out, walking past with their bags slung over their shoulders, laughing, smoking, and scrolling through their phones. One of them noticed the dog and recoiled.
Oh, gross.
What the hell is that? A zombie dog? No kidding. Another sneered. Someone should put it out of its misery. One man stepped closer, wrinkling his nose. That thing is diseased. Bet it bites. Someone threw an empty soda can. It clanged off the dumpster, startling the dog, who whimpered but did not run. It had nowhere to go. They laughed.
And
then he appeared. Raymond pushed his cleaning cart down the cracked sidewalk, the plastic wheels squeaking under the weight of mop buckets and trash bags. His uniform hung loose on his wiry frame. His left leg dragged slightly, the result of an accident on a construction site 2 decades earlier. His left hand was twisted, never fully recovered from nerve damage. A faded scar ran down the side of his cheek, half hidden by a worn cap. He had been sweeping the sidewalk nearby when he noticed the group gathered. When he saw the dog, he stopped. No one paid him any attention until he began removing his only jacket. He walked through the group without a word. They parted with uncomfortable glances. The old man knelt beside the dying creature. The dog flinched but did not snarl. Raymond's movements were slow, deliberate. He placed the jacket over the dog's trembling body and tucked it in gently, as if he were swaddling a newborn. Woman scoffed loudly from behind. Seriously, you can't even take care of yourself and you are saving that disease. Factory. Another voice joined in. Younger man, phone held high to capture video. World's saddest superhero. Garbage man and the rotting dog.
This
is going viral. More laughter. Turned away, embarrassed. Others took out their phones, too. Raymond stood slowly, not looking at them at first. Then he turned his head toward the man filming. His voice was calm, but it cut through the air like broken glass. Least I pick up what the world throws away. What have you done today besides laugh at pain? The laughter died. Thick silence fell over the group.
The
man with the phone lowered his hand.
No
one responded. No one laughed again. Raymond reached down, lifting the dog gently into his arms. The animal whimpered but did not resist. It nestled into his chest as if it had been waiting its whole life for this exact moment. Rain soaked them both, but Raymond moved steadily, wheeling his cart with one hand and holding the dog with the other, like a king returning home with a wounded knight. The group watched him. Walk away. No one said a word.
And in
that moment, Raymond did not look like a broken janitor. He looked like a man who had found something worth carrying. Raymond's apartment was not much more than a forgotten basement, tucked beneath a crumbling building on the edge of town. The stairs leading down were narrow and damp, the walls stained with years of moisture and neglect. The single window near the ceiling let in barely a sliver of light, and the air always smelled faintly of rust and old wood, but it was warm. It was quiet, and it was his. He laid the dog gently onto a folded blanket beside the small space heater. The creature did not move, only let out a faint, exhausted breath. Raymond crouched down beside him, his joints protesting with every motion, and examined the damage. The German shepherd's body was covered in sores. His hind leg was swollen, his left ear half torn, and patches of his coat were missing entirely. "You are in bad shape, fella," Raymond murmured. "But so am I." He paused, then added, "Let's call you Bruno." It took him nearly an hour to clean Bruno up. He warmed water on his tiny stove, dipped rags into it, and carefully dabbed at each wound. The dog flinched but never growled. Raymond whispered apologies each time Bruno twitched in pain. He did not have much, but what he had he gave. He poured some of his canned broth over a scoop of rice and mashed it into something soft. Bruno sniffed it, but did not eat. Raymond did not press him. He placed the bowl beside the blanket and lay down on his creaky cot across the room within sight but not too close. That first night, Raymond barely slept. The storm outside howled, wind rattling the windows, but all he could hear was Bruno's shallow breathing. Every cough, every shift, every tiny sound the dog made reached into his chest like a phantom hand, reminding him that he was no longer alone. For 3 days, Bruno did not move. He did not eat, only drank a little water and watched. But his eyes never left Raymond. Raymond talked to him. "You know, I used to be strong," he said one evening, sitting cross-legged on the cold floor. "Worked construction, big jobs, roofs, highways, bridges." He chuckled dryly. "Then the accident happened. Steel beam crushed my hip. Nerves in my hand went dead. After that, everything changed." He glanced at Bruno, who blinked slowly. "My wife said she could not handle it. That I became a shadow of myself. My son, he was angry, said I was weak. I have not seen either of them in 10 years. Bruno's ear twitched. Raymond leaned back against the wall. "I guess people do not like things that break. Well, maybe. They just forget how to fix them." The words hung in the stillness of the room. He was not expecting comfort. He did not need it, but he was no longer saying these things to empty air. On the 4th morning, as the first hint of dawn touched the edge of the sky, Raymond woke to the sound of movement. Bruno had shifted. The bowl of food was empty. The dog's body still trembled, but his head was upright. Raymond blinked in disbelief. "Well, look at you." He knelt beside him, and this time Bruno did not flinch. Instead, he leaned forward, slow, deliberate, and pressed his nose against Raymond's scarred hand. Then with a rough, dry tongue, he licked it. Was not just a gesture of trust. It was acknowledgment. 2 beings that the world had cast aside, one forgotten in a basement, the other left to die in the street had found something no one expected them to have. Each other. Started with a strange noise. Raymond was sweeping the north hallway of the school one morning, moving slowly, his mop gliding over the tiled floor with a familiar rhythm. Bruno lay nearby, eyes half closed, resting as he usually did. During Raymond's early shift, the hallway was empty except for them, quiet, as the rain tapped softly on the windows. Then Bruno stood up abruptly. His ears perked. He sniffed the air twice, then let out a sharp, urgent bark. Raymond turned, startled. Bruno had never barked indoors. Before he could speak, Bruno trotted to him, bit gently into his sleeve, and began tugging. "What is it, boy?" Raymond asked, but his question died as a wave of dizziness struck him. Bruno growled, low, insistent, pulling harder now. Raymond allowed himself to be led toward the exit they had just stepped out of the hallway when a loud crack echoed behind them. A section of the plaster ceiling gave way and collapsed exactly where Raymond had been standing. Dust billowed through the air like smoke. People came running. Some called it coincidence. Others whispered that maybe Bruno had heard something. A few clapped Raymond on the shoulder, saying, "Glad you're okay, man." But Raymond noticed how they looked at Bruno a little differently, a little longer. Happened again a week later. This time, at the teacher's lounge, Bruno refused to enter, barking at the door. When the building manager investigated, he found a small gas leak near the heater. Then came the incident at the coffee shop across the street where Bruno stopped Raymond from stepping inside moments before a fuse blew and sparks rained from the ceiling fan. 3 near disasters, 3 warnings, all from the same dog. Curiosity spread. A structural engineer named Thomas, who had read about K9 scent detection, asked to observe Bruno. He brought sensors and sound meters, and after spending an afternoon walking alongside them, he said, "Dogs can detect changes. We can't. Vibrations, chemical traces, electromagnetic shifts. But this dog, he reacts faster than anything I've seen. He's extremely sensitive." Word got out. The staff began calling him the knows who knows. Kids left treats in his water bowl. Neighbors began greeting Raymond with nods of respect, even those who once mocked him. The bakery owner, who had once laughed at Raymond's jacket wrapped mutt, now asked, "Hey, think Bruno can do a lap around my back room today?" Raymond never boasted. He only smiled. He knew what it meant to be doubted, dismissed, forgotten, and now it was his silence paired with Bruno's instinct that was quietly reshaping how people saw them both. Then came the night that sealed their place in the hearts of the entire community. It was late, and Raymond had stopped by the convenience store after his shift to grab a can of soup. Bruno walked beside him as always. As they neared the entrance, Bruno froze. He let out a deep growl, something primal, protective. Then he lunged forward and blocked Raymond's path completely. Raymond paused. "What is it?" he asked. Bruno barked sharply and began pushing him backward with his head. Seconds later, the explosion came. A sudden, deafening burst of fire and glass erupted from the rear of the store. A faulty underground gas line had ignited. Flames licked the sidewalk. Alarms screamed into the night. Inside the store, 6 people were caught near the blast. 2 employees, 3 customers, and 1 toddler in a stroller. But Bruno's warning had given Raymond just enough time to rush inside, pulling open the door and shouting, "Get out now!" They ran. Every single one made it out alive. The next morning, newspapers did not mention Raymond's limp or his twisted hand. They wrote about the dog with the nose that saved a block, and standing beside that dog quietly was the man who had once been mocked for carrying him out of the trash. It was supposed to be a normal afternoon. A neighbor had asked Raymond if Bruno could take a walk around the perimeter of the old Mapleview apartment complex, where residents had recently reported flickering lights and strange smells. Bruno had become something of a neighborhood legend. His presence alone gave people peace of mind. Raymond agreed without hesitation. As they walked the narrow corridor on the 4th floor, Bruno suddenly tensed. His ears shot up. His nose twitched rapidly. Then came the bark, a sharp alarm sound that Raymond now recognized as a signal. Before Raymond could speak, Bruno took off down the hallway, scrambling against the tile. Smoke was beginning to seep from the base of a door at the end of the corridor. Raymond followed, heart pounding just as the fire alarm blared to life. Inside the apartment, a small kitchen fire had leapt to the curtains, and now flames licked up the walls. In the middle of the chaos, a girl no older than 5 stood frozen near the doorway, screaming. Her mother had just stepped out to the laundry room. Bruno charged through the smoke. He barked once, loud, commanding, and nudged the girl, guiding her through the doorway as fire began to crackle overhead. A split second later, a pane of glass from the kitchen window shattered violently from the heat. Large shards struck Bruno across the shoulder. As he turned to shield the child, Raymond reached them just as the mother came running up the stairwell. He handed her the sobbing child. Bruno limped behind him, blood soaking through the fur on his side. Paramedics arrived. Firefighters put out the flames. The girl was safe, but Bruno was rushed to the animal emergency clinic, unconscious. The neighborhood held its breath. By morning, news of the incident had already spread. Photos of Bruno wrapped in bandages flooded local forums. Neighbors, strangers, even school children showed up outside the clinic. They brought flowers, dog biscuits, homemade signs, and letters written in shaky crayon. One boy, no older than 7, handed Raymond a note that said, "You and your dog are why I believe in good people." Raymond stood outside the clinic, gripping the note with trembling fingers. For years, he had been invisible. For years, no one had cared what he felt, what he lost, what he loved. But now they were all looking at him, waiting for him to say something. His voice cracked when he finally did. I picked him up, thinking he had no future, he said, eyes glistening. Now I am begging the world to give him one. A silence fell, followed by slow, solemn applause. Someone shouted, "We will." And within hours, a community fund was launched in Bruno's name. Donations poured in, enough to cover his surgery, rehabilitation, and more. But the campaign grew beyond that. The money also funded a new program, a Community Early Wage K-9 initiative, with Bruno as its honorary founding member. His new title, Guardian of Maple
View.
And Raymond, he just smiled and whispered at Bruno's bedside, "Looks like they see you now, buddy, just like I did." Bruno healed, but the vet was clear. The deep muscle tear and lingering nerve damage meant he would never move the same again.
No more
sprinting down hallways or lunging through smoke. His days as a working dog were over. Raymond looked at him lying on the porch, his eyes calm but alert, tail thudding softly whenever someone approached. "You have done more than your share," he said quietly. "Time to rest." But neither of them was built for stillness. With a portion of the remaining community fund, Raymond bought a second-hand delivery tricycle, rusted, dented, but still sturdy. Over the course of 2 weeks, with help from neighbors and a few students from the school, they transformed it, painted bright blue. Its side was stenkled in white block letters, "Mobile Paw Pantry." The idea was simple. Raymond and Bruno would pedal through the city, parks, alleys, shelters, and offer free pet food to homeless people with animals and anyone struggling to care for their furry companion. They did not ask for money. They asked for compassion. "If you have extra, give," read the small sign attached to the back of the cart. "If you need it, take." At first, a few cans appeared. Then, bags of dry food, boxes of treats, leashes, collars, even toys. People began dropping off donations regularly, often with handwritten notes. Tucked inside, Bruno, sitting proudly in his cushioned Sideck car, wore a soft bandana that read, "Retired but still on duty." Children rushed to pet him. Elderly women offered him apples and keys. Street musicians paused to play hymn songs. They became a fixture of the city. Raymond, once the man nobody noticed, was now the one people waited for on Saturday mornings. He never gave speeches. He just handed out kindness, like it was the only currency he had ever needed. One afternoon, a letter came from a child. The handwriting was uneven, the spelling imperfect, but the words were clear. "Dear Mr. Raymond, thank you for giving food to my dog when we were living in our car. Bruno saved more than lives. He saved dignity." Raymond read it twice before folding it gently and slipping it into his pocket. He said nothing, but the next day he hung a copy inside the cart. As autumn painted the trees gold and rust, the Mobile Paw Pantry made its final stop of the day outside a small animal shelter on the edge of town. Raymond sat on a worn wooden bench, watching the leaves tumble past. Bruno lay beside him, his head resting on Raymond's knee, eyes closed, chest rising and falling with slow, steady pace. A teenage volunteer, the newest helper, finished unloading a box of donated kibble and sat beside him. He glanced at the cart, then at Bruno, then at Raymond. "People once laughed when I picked up a dying dog," Raymond said suddenly, not looking up. "Now that dog has fed hundreds." The boy was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Do you ever regret it taking him in?" "Mean," Raymond smiled. Small, genuine, full of something deep and soft. He looked down at Bruno, still sleeping, still warm. "Only that I didn't pick him up sooner." The wind rustled through the trees, scattering leaves like blessings, and for a moment the world felt still and full, not of noise, not of wealth, not of fame, but of something far greater, of love, of purpose, of a life. That mattered. Thank you for staying with us through the unforgettable journey of Raymond and Bruno.
A man the
World overlooked and a dog the world left to die. Together, they showed us that even those with the least can give the most. That compassion costs nothing, yet changes everything, and that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness ripple out into something far greater than we can ever imagine. If this story touched your heart, imagine how many more are out there waiting to be told. Subscribe to Amazing Paw Stories for more powerful, emotional, true stories of animal rescue, redemption, and the unbreakable bond between humans and the animals who walk beside them. Because in every corner of the world, there's a dog waiting to be seen and a person ready to